Well, there goes our ride. See you later. 2 weeks. See you later. Now we're stuck here in Canada and Maine. That's right. See ya. Thank you. Hi everybody. This is day one, June 7th. This is the parking lot in Calais, Maine, at the beginning of the East Coast Greenway. The red building there was the main visitor center, and we're walking over to the St. Croix River. Across the river is Canada, and we're going to be heading out 526 miles from Calais all the way to Moosup, Connecticut.
So this is a view of the river again, just to give you an idea of how close we were to Canada when we first started. It's a picture of our bikes.
It's the beginning of the trail right there. And it kind of parallels the St. Croix River for a little bit before we head to Moosehorn.
So on this day, the weather was pretty interesting. When we stopped by the visitor centers just before we started riding, the person there warned us about how it was going to start raining. I believe he said around noon, right?
Yep.
So while we were there, he asked us about our trip and gave us a map of the different trails through Maine and suggested that we take the Moosehorn National Wildlife Refuge. Um, it was a gorgeous trail. We were glad that he mentioned it. But for the most part, getting down there is a lot of what you're seeing here, which is road.
Yeah, lots of road, but quiet roads. This is Route 1 right here. Once you cross Route 1, it settles down a little bit. And the closer we get into the Moosehorn Wildlife Area, the traffic kind of dies down. The weather was really good for bike riding, anyways. It was a little cool, cloudy. There was not a lot of sun beating down on us, so we could just kind of pedal and relax. But road conditions were good. We got one beep. Somebody didn't like us in the road, but it was just a lot of fun to be out here and ride and smelling the smells of Maine. And the woods are really thick, if you notice, and you'll see a little bit further into the video. The woods in Connecticut are full of trees, but these woods here with the pine trees are so thick and you can't really see through them. It's just it was just beautiful.
So this section of the road probably doesn't look that great to be riding on from what you're seeing, but the drivers were actually pretty respectful of us being on the road. As you can see, the car just went by and gave us a wide berth, and we always appreciate that when we're riding on the road. Most of the ride was really nice. We did have one instance where your hood got loose.
Yeah.
That was a little scary considering it was the first day and we were already dealing with some bike issues.
So my bike was bulletproof all last year. This year, we started out, like Leslie said, with a hood issue. I was just leaning forward, pedaling, and the whole thing came loose. But it was a quick fix to pull the shroud off and tighten it back up. It just the screw came backed out for some reason. But that was the first of one of our issues, and if that's the worst issue we had, that was really good. For now, that was the biggest issue we had of that day. So but it was nice to stop and take a break, have a sip of water.
I think that's a real good testament too of making sure that you have tools when you go on any kind of bike ride, but especially when you're bike packing, that you anticipate some of the tools that you might need because when this happened, we were literally in the middle of nowhere.
Correct. And it was quick and easy. Just tighten the thing back up. Maybe the vibrations of banging around. These roads weren't smooth, and the gravel bikes were really good on them. But yeah, that's probably what happened. It probably just backed out from vibration.
So this is one of the roads when we got to this point, we were kind of counting down the miles until we got to the Downey Sunrise Trail. Um, the road was pretty nice here, and it was a very, you could tell it wasn't traveled very often. So it was really cool to ride on. We did start to feel a little panicky at this point. As you can see, the sky's getting gray. And because we had been warned earlier about the weather, we were concerned about the rain coming and soaking us before we could get to Machias. But I think, at least for the start of it, we lucked out. We did get a little bit of rain, and we thought we were in the clear. We'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah. We we were okay with the rain at this point, all the way onto the Down East Trail. It was nice in the woods with a nice mist. It wasn't really a hard rain. It was just a nice sprinkle, consistent, steady.
So here you can see us kind of zigzagging up the hill, and we were just starting to feel the hills a little bit. Um, it was something that I was really nervous about when we went on, because this was my first bike trip, and going through Maine, I had heard how horrible the hills were. And so I was trying to do the zigzag up the road to try to make that hill a little bit easier. And little did I know that was a baby hill compared to what we were about to experience. So you're about to hear me complain a little bit about the hills and some of the realization of what some of the things that Steve told me from his prior ride from last year.
I get the frustration. I'm sure it gets worse, but I'm starting to get an idea of what the frustration's all about.
Yeah, the hills?
Yeah, well, like you can't relax.
No. You can just take the downhill for what it is.
No, you can't. Like, no, my point is like the downhill is just that, but it ends.
Right.
So we're coming up to the gravel part of the trail. We're about to end the road. I think it was mile 18 or 20, somewhere in that range. And then from the gravel trail we turn onto is a straight shot all the way to Machias. That's where my blueberry pie is and my Baxter IPA. So that's what kind of motivated me to keep digging through the rain, keep digging through everything. I couldn't wait to get some of that blueberry pie. It's fantastic. I was at Helen's in Machias.
Yeah, we were both a little conflicted there once we got onto the trail because I liked it so much I didn't want to get off of it. So I was a little slow, and he was ready for blueberry pie.
I was.
He
I'm
was
not gonna
enjoying it too, though. It was
Yeah.
beautiful out there.
Yeah, it was unbelievable just to see to see where the trail went, crossing some of the little ponds and marshes, and you could almost go back in time and imagine the railroad coming through there and all the history along that trail which is there. And it provides more than just bike packers like us. They let regular side by sides, four wheelers, dirt bikes, anybody can use it. It's a multi-use trail. It's very well done. It's not chopped up and torn up. The rain was actually nice because it kept the dust down, because usually it's sandy and dusty, and it was just very well packed. It was just beautiful, and it was fast rolling on it. It was fun.
So you're about to hear me talk about how great the rain is once it gets started, and our realization of what it was like to ride our bikes in the rain and how to keep everything dry.
That's a picture.
Yeah, it's not the big one.
Yeah. Except I'm gonna need you to take it because my phone's all wrapped up. Oh, listen to that though. Yes, it is. This is gonna be soaked.
Oh, no.
Remember when I was like, should we bring the extra dry bag? I didn't even think about my jacket.
I can put it in mine probably.
Nah. For now, I mean, it's already wet. When we get to the hotel, I'll see if they have a dryer there.
Yeah.
And then when I pack up next time, I'll see if I can just throw it in one of my bags.
Well, my buffalo, we can fit it in my dry bag back here. Okay?
No, I think it'll fit in my my other, like my actual bag.
Okay.
It's just not convenient to grab. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah, I put my sweatshirt in the dry bag because that's what I'm going to keep warm with. So
Yeah.
I figure if I get wet, I can just throw my sweatshirt on after.
Yeah.
That bridge is not your friend. Beaver Dam.
This is the point in the ride where I was in denial over how bad the rain was going to be. And we had, as you can see, it had been raining. It was kind of between continuing to rain and stopping. I thought it wasn't going to get any worse. As you heard from the previous clip, I had my jacket out. It was strapped to the outside of my rear bag, and I thought it had gotten a little damp. I didn't think it was going to get any worse, and I was just going to dry it at the hotel. Little did we know the rain got much worse later in the ride.
Right, and we had our rain gear on the bike, but we didn't put it on, and it just started as a drizzle, and then we got wet, and then it was fine, and then it rained a little harder, but we thought that was it, and we were already wet. It wasn't cold; it was a warm rain, so it was too late to put the rain gear on.
We even talked about putting the rain gear on at one point, and we were both like, well, we're already damp enough. We don't want to put the rain gear on over it. And that was one of the sneaky things about the rain, because we did get caught in the rain a couple of times after this day. And it generally started pretty slow, so we would already be wet before we had the rain gear out,
Right.
except for one day.
Yeah, we actually ended up putting our rain gear on early later on down in the trip, and it just worked out better for us. But I always kept my sweatshirt at least in the dry bag inside one of my waterproof bags because I knew that was what was going to keep me warm during the night, whether we're camping or in a hotel. You just want to be dry, and it was a lesson learned, and it's a lesson we can share with other people. Make sure you bring a dry bag with you, put your coat in it, take the time to, if you have a jacket, put it in the dry bag. Take the time to pull over and stop if you need to take it off, instead of just strapping it to the bike because it got soaked, and as well as the rest of our clothes. And
And dryers were not as easy to come by
there
as
was no dryers
we
at the
thought
hotel
they
rooms.
would be. So we took a handful of pictures as we were going down the Downey Sunrise Trail when it would stop raining. It had moments. It's absolutely beautiful out there, as you can see.
It was gorgeous, and we did get our chance to take our cameras out. We packed them in Ziploc bags because we needed to kind of see where we were going. But that's the East Machias River right there, and there's Helen's.
We finally made it, and the sky absolutely opened up.
Right, and there's the pie. But we actually had another mile and a half to get to our motel room, and we just bucked up and got back on the bikes and pedaled through the downpour.
So this is day 2, and you can see what was left on the backside of our bags from the mud splatter that was on the road. It was an absolutely beautiful day, by the way, toward the end of the day when we left Machias.
It was nice leaving Machias. We had some bike cleaning to do. Chains needed to be cleaned, and because they were pretty gritty from the dirt, we got back on the road, and we decided to take Route 1 instead of the Downey Sunrise Trail here because we had a campsite to get to, and it would have been way easier to just take Route 1 than backtrack through the Downey Sunrise Trail.
So this section of Route 1 is actually pretty cool. We tried slowing down so that our GoPro would pick up those white signs that you see us passing. The video just wouldn't show it up, but each sign is a section of the Pledge of Allegiance. And it was pretty cool. It went on for about a mile.
Yeah, about a mile. And each sign had just a little piece of the pledge. And it was just neat to see. Kind of cool. It's right on the side of Route 1, and it was a really cool little spot in Maine to pedal through.
So it was nice to ride with the sun out. When we left that morning, it was still pretty drizzly, and we were concerned about what the day was going to be like, but it turned out really nice.
Yeah, and we're heading to Jonesboro, which is going to be one of these little towns. These towns just popped up there, and they don't consist of much. There's a post office, a church, and a hardware store, so you can get some mulch.
Pretty much throughout all of Maine, hardware stores and
Yeah.
and dispensaries. So we are pulling up here to the Blueberry Museum, which unfortunately was not open. I think it's geared towards children, but we wanted to go in and see it. And this is the world's largest wire lobster trap. And looks
And
like we
there's
caught
me
a
inside of
Steve
it.
in there.
Right. It was pretty fun to go check out. And then we're back on the road. We're heading to Sullivan, Maine at this point. We had 2 different options for campgrounds. A really primitive one,
And when we say primitive, we mean,
nothing there.
yeah.
So there was that one, or we could pedal another 5 miles um, to a spot where the people were very friendly. And you'll see in the video they brought us our wood for us. The campsite was super nice. But so dispensaries were a big thing. You could get a lobster roll here too
Yeah,
for
on the left
$10.
side, there's a dispensary, and if you went there, they would give you a lobster roll for $10.
Yeah,
Very strange.
but it's nice up here. The scenery was really nice. Like I said, the towns are very sporadic. We went through Jonesboro, Steuben, Millbridge, um, just really nice towns, and they're just spackled around on Route One, just right down the road.
Yeah, and the rides on this section too were not too hilly.
No, it was a nice ride.
So the campground that we stayed at was actually pretty nice. It was geared towards, I believe, RVs and cabins, but they had 2 tent sites on the entire campground, and the tent sites were really large. They were very spacious, which is really nice when you're in a tent. The last thing you want is someone else like 2 feet over from you. So it was really cool.
Yeah, it was nice. There was the picnic table and the fire pit away from where the tent was. It was very roomy. Usually they pack all kinds of sites in there to get the most bang for the buck or most money they can get. And these people obviously didn't care about that. They just cared about having a really nice campground. There was an ice cream place on to the left and a barbecue place to the right. So we chose barbecue.
Plenty of food to eat.
Yeah.
Steve did run into a little issue though, where he went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Well, not in the bathroom.
I have outdoor plumbing, and I decided to go over to the woods, to the tree line and pee, and apparently the neighbor up on the hill must have had binoculars on and saw me peeing.
Maybe. We suspect he might have. Next thing we know, my phone was ringing from the campground, and I did not answer my phone. And one of the owners was driving over to the person that we suspect might have complained.
But there's always one in every crowd.
Yeah.
What do they call those guys? Not a Karen, but a Darren, maybe? Is that
Oh,
what his
I don't
name?
know.
Yeah.
It ended up being a wonderful stay, though. The people there were great.
Yeah, they didn't bother us after
No.
that. I think they told him to leave us alone. So they knew we were bike packing. They knew we were just stopping through. They were very courteous and gracious to us. I don't remember the name of the campground. Do you remember the name?
I don't, but we'll look it up and we'll make sure include it at the end.
Yeah. So the first place we stayed was in Machias, was the Bluebird Inn. It was a little cheaper than the Machias River Inn, and it was a clean, comfortable stay. And then in the campground in Sullivan, I forget the name of it, Acadia Shores or something like that.
I think it was.
Yeah, Acadia Shores. But we'll get the name right. That way, if anybody's watching and wants to take this trip,
That's a great place to stay.
yeah, it's perfect. Just use the outhouse.
Actual bathroom, which was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be bothered.
Bathroom with showers, and it's always good to have, especially at the end of the bike trip.
This is also where I lost my only pair of shorts that I brought that wasn't biking. They were my comfy shorts. I went to change, and I went to put some long pants to sleep in, and I left my shorts hanging on the shower rack, and off I went and forgot them there. So I was shortless the rest of the way.
Until we got to Boston,
Yeah.
which we'll tell you about that when we get there.
So here we go. There's a sign right going on my right hand side. Mexican food, hand painted. Next right. There's something that is just not appetizing about Mexican food this far north into the woods of Maine, but we went by it.
There's another
There's another sign. It doesn't look bad when we went by it, but I had to do a double take, as you can see. I'm like, Mexican food up
I
here.
was caught off guard because again it's Maine, and the signs were handwritten. But as we drove by, I got a good look at the um, restaurant, and it actually looked like it was.
It might have
I
been
would have
good.
tried it, but I wasn't hungry.
I passed on it because it's just I wasn't in the mood for Mexican food, especially up here. It's like getting sushi in Ohio. I don't know if I could do it.
Getting sushi from Target.
Yeah, maybe Target sushi. It's just not good.
So I believe this is the point, though, we were counting down the miles.
Yeah, we are. We had a app on our phone that told us our mileage for the day, and it showed us where we were, and it had a ticker that rolled backwards so we could see how many miles we had left. And it was frustrating when you started and it said you have 58 miles to go, but when you got down to under 10 miles, it was like, here we go, we're almost there. You just got a final push to get through here.
Yeah, that's usually the point where I look down at the ticker and it feels like a mile has gone by and it's only been a quarter mile.
Yeah,
That's the rough part.
yeah. You can't stare at it too long because it's heartbreaking sometimes. But we pushed through. We had a nice ride through Gouldsboro, and it was great. And we came up to that campground in Sullivan, and there was a barbecue joint. Just a nice little place right on the bay. The views were great. And again, they had a camp store, which was cool, and they had firewood, so we were able to have our fire.
One of the great things about having a camp store is we could stock up on water, which was pretty important for the evening and the following morning, especially when we were leaving early and the store was closed. So we had to be pretty strategic and do some planning there.
Yeah, we picked up all our water for the what we were gonna have for the night, and we also had to pick up our water for our trip out of there because, as you can see, there's no little Cumberland Farms or no 7-Elevens anywhere to be found. It was what you had on you. So, and we packed extra water bottles. I had two on the forks, and I had one on the frame, and Leslie had a couple also.
So we're finally at the campsite here. You can see the vehicle that's in front of us is one of the owners. He was bringing the wood down to the campsite for us, and he was
Right.
kind enough to get us some paper to start it as well because we didn't have anything like that with us. And there were a lot of chipmunks down there, which I thought was pretty cool.
And if you don't have beer with your eggs, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Gross. So these are the signs. We stopped by each one to get photos with the bikes. The signs were nice.
Yeah, the signs were nice.
Not all the towns had them.
Right. The ones we could find, though, they were fun to take a picture with. That's the one thing I regret about last year is I didn't take any pictures of these. So this year I wanted to make sure I did.
So this is the end of day 2, and the next video will be from Sullivan to Belfast and then Noblesboro to Portland. We missed a day due to rain. See you there.